was started basically to initiate diverse conversations about India, US, the relationship, the prospects, how we're doing, are we doing well? Because essentially it's my conviction that this is a hugely multi-layered, multifaceted relationship which is not really understood in its true dimensions. Series, another flagship series next year, and it is called India State by State, a systematic introduction of Indian states in US, so that people understand that India is not Delhi and Mumbai alone. It's neither Bangalore and Hyderabad alone. It's much beyond that. Each state has its own environment, whether touristic or investment, and the people should know where the opportunities lie. So run for a year now, we'll be entering its new phase, and the new phase will be called Humanity. The Humanity stands for women. Women from humanity to humanity. So all our 12 speakers will be women speakers, distinguished women speakers. We have actually inaugurated this series last week, and our first speaker was Nirupama Rao. Our next speaker on 26th January is Indra Nooyi. India has declared this consulate as the model clean consulate. Because of the work that we have undertaken at the Consulate of cleaning last 30-40 years, accumulated, you can say, documents, accumulated papers, accumulated garbage, whatever you call it. And Foreign Minister has requested all the Indian missions abroad to follow the example of this consulate. I'm very happy because this is part of how we want to promote this consulate and the relationship with the community and the consulate. Most of you know about Chief Kaye speaking on the most interesting topic. I feel that these are the most propitious times for our relationship. First time President of US, sitting President going second time, and again for the first time for the Indian Republic Day as its chief guest. It's a remarkable beginning, and I don't have to tell you about the successful visit of our Prime Minister and many successful visits that we are all likely to see in the near future. With these words, I welcome our friend Chip. I also welcome Paritosh from Reuters, Thomson Reuters, and I'm sure we're all going to be witnessing a very, very interesting discussion this evening. Thank you so much.
To begin with, I asked this question. I know it's not directly related to investing in India, but every time I speak with somebody out in India, like just their experience of India, when it was the first time you went there, what did you think? What you back there?
I think back a fair bit. As you mentioned, I've been at Warburg Pincus essentially since I graduated college, so it'll be 29 years next summer. And in 1993, our then managing partner had decided it was time for our firm to move to Asia, similarly as we had done in Europe in the middle part of the 1980s, sort of always believing that for our firm to be successful, another generation had to learn to do outside the U.S. what it had done inside the U.S. In many ways, it's probably been one of the more prescient moves the firm made, which is having sort of moved early. And we were fortunate, in fact, last month to have celebrated our 20th anniversary of having been in Asia. But in any event, I was the lucky one with the one-way airplane ticket to Hong Kong, where my wife and I went with our one child, ultimately came back with three. And my first trip to India was the first person I actually hired when we got there, a man named Dilip Pathak, some people in the room know, who at the time had been, India had been sort of, the true kind of Fabian socialist experiment up until 1991, when essentially the economic crisis sort of forced the beginning of economic reform. When we first started going there in 94 and the mid-90s, the core thesis for us, the core thing I guess I saw at the time was a few things. So India had very high real rates of interest. And when I say real rates, meaning nominal rates less inflation. And that was largely a function at the time of what was rather modest inflation, but in interest rates that were less set in a market sense, but tended to be a function of these small savings schemes that existed at the time, these sort of state-administered programs. And in some ways, I used to sometimes think they were a function almost of a sort of a non-existent pension system, because you kind of had people retire on a pension, you had to have a high enough rate of interest that people could take some modest savings and translate it somehow into a living.
Only a political jargon, or it is a realistic attainment possibility? Because I recall in my growing days, the first Prime Minister of India had made a statement, export or perish. India didn't go anywhere near that. So this part of the campaign, Make in India, is it a realistic possibility? And what would be his biggest challenge in accomplishing that, in addition to the land acquisition issues that grips India? Thank you.
Good to see you. I think there's two ways to take it. I think, I actually think sometimes as you termed it, sort of the political jargon or political, don't forget the politics of this. I mean, I think one of his real potential advantages is an ability to actually understand the politics and sort of sustain political momentum through what will inevitably be ups and downs. And, it's not always going to be good. And so I think his ability to kind of capture political attention is one of
I was thinking about your economic complacency statement, and I was wondering if you've seen anything at the state level, whether it be Modi as an inspiration for how you can move up from a career perspective, or just in terms of what they're doing, that would suggest a shift from the complacency more at the state level than what you see at the national level.
I think there's no doubt about it, and I think it went on during those periods of time. You saw a lot of sort of disparities in sort of state performance, and you had some more forward-thinking leaders in some of those states that transformed places that had highly differential rates of growth in different parts of the country, and some successes in places that people wouldn't have picked, Bihar or whatever. But that's always been in play.
Warburg Pincus was one of the first movers into India, and there was an information edge and a capital edge that you had at that point. It's a very different country now. There's the problem of overvaluation, unrealistic expectations, and so on. How does how do you as a firm set in the mechanism to find out the next Mittal or the next Bharti, given where the expectations are on value? And how do you prepare yourself, and can you prepare yourself for an exit when you look about it, out of 5 or 7 year horizon?
Look, I think while I have and had a positive view about it, I think I've also been pretty clear that it's a difficult place and it's not necessarily for everybody. There are some real challenges, and I think especially for firms that have a Western DNA and Western centricity, especially New York one, it can be a big challenge. And I've seen a lot of people come in ways that probably the more constructive answer would have been not to come at all. And look, I've seen people do well and I've seen people not do well. So to me, I think it's an honest debate to have for any firm. And I think